First, I would like to introduce author Marjorie Liu, who tonight will be leading a conversation with Brian Bendis. Marjorie is an accomplished author of over 20 novels and a prolific comic book author as well, most recently making the news. Oh, we have some fans. That's great. For Monstrous, the Eisner and Hugo Award-winning graphic novels that have found a home on the New York Times bestseller list. And like our main speaker tonight, she is also a Marvel Comics alum, make mine Marvel, having written for the Dark Wolverine series, Black Widow, X-23, Han Solo, X-Men, and others. Her portrayals of LGBTQ characters have won her accolades as well. The MIT community first got to know Marjorie here in Comparative Media Studies and Writing, where we have had the pleasure of hosting her comic books writing class. So if you're interested in that, hopefully next fall it will be offered again. I also forgot, did I introduce myself? I don't think I did. Anyway, I'm Ed Schappa, I'm the department head, but
yay!
Tonight's featured guest is Brian Michael Bendis. Brian is a 5-time Eisner winner, which is the Eisner Award is sort of like the Oscars of the comics industry. The arc of his career is interesting. He initially supported his comics habit with a gig as an illustrator for his hometown newspaper. After stints at smaller comics, such as Image, where he won his first Eisner, Brian was hired by Marvel Comics in 2000 to launch its Ultimate Spider-Man series. At Marvel, he would go on to write or collaborate on some of the biggest steps forward in contemporary comics. For example, in 2011, he and Sarah Pacelli created the character of Miles Morales, an Afro-Latino teenager, as a new Spider-Man, who is, I saw a preview for a animated movie coming out. I hope you're getting a piece of that, but at any rate. Brian created or developed many characters for Marvel. He has served as an author on everything from Daredevil to Jessica Jones, The Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, and an incredible 100-issue run for X-Men. Before moving last year to write for DC Comics, even people at MIT who don't follow comics knew that Invincible Iron Man Volume 3, Number 7, when Brian introduced the character of Riri Williams, an MIT student who hacks together parts poached from campus to create her own Iron Man suit, and thus creating Ironheart, a black female superhero. The middle picture, by the way, is artwork that somebody, I don't know who, painted in one of our tunnels here after MIT Admissions did a video that featured her as a character for Pi Day last year. Now, of course, as many of you know, this is the Julius Schwartz lecture series. Julius Schwartz worked for DC. I had one of my colleagues to say, I don't know how it would feel to have a Marvel person invited to speak here. And then I think that's why Brian jumped ship and went to DC. But at any rate, as you all know, Brian is now writing for DC and working on the original superhero, a comic book superhero, Superman, when I think this would have been your first work published with that, is that right? Yeah. As I said, this lecture series honors Julius Schwartz, the co-founder of the first science fiction fanzine in 1932 and the DC Comics editor that helped launch the DC side of the Silver Age of comics, seeing the reinvention of characters such as Batman, Superman, and The Flash, as well as others. This event is supported by a generous gift by author Neil Gaiman, who was our first Schwartz lecturer, and we are most grateful to him. Previous Schwartz lecturers have included Gaiman and Babylon 5 creator Michael Straczynski, and tonight's Comparative Media Studies is happy to add to that list Brian Michael Bendis. So I'll turn it over to you. There will be Q&A later, and that's what those mics in the aisle are for.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you for doing this, Marjorie. Before I was interrupted, no, I wanted to tell you that because sometimes when people see things like this, they're like, "Oh, we know each other. Like we would be pals." We don't know each other at all, like at all. But we have a lot of mutual friends.
Yes.
And Kelly Sue has made it very clear this will be great. So, but I love that. I love that we don't know, but I thought people would like to know that you're asked you're asking questions you might not know the answers to, as opposed to.
I actually don't know the answers
Yeah.
to any of these questions I'm asking.
That's awesome.
So I'm genuinely curious, and I'm here, just like all of you, to find out more about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, is it not? Is this better? Is
All
that,
right.
was it pointing in the wrong direction? It went sideways? All right.
All right.
Okay. If you guys can't hear me, just shout. Just let me know, all right? It's good?
All right.
Okay, cool. So I thought I would just start with the beginning, because you've had a long career. You've worked on so many books and so many different projects in different mediums. And so, please forgive this most basic question, but why do you write?
No, I appreciate that. That's actually one of the themes of my life of the last few years. You spend a lot of time, and I'm sure a lot of you are in the how phase. Like, how do you do this? How? And you're so busy with the how that the why can fall to the wayside, because the why is actually a scarier question. It's actually a much harder question to answer, and the answer is constantly changing. And as soon as you grab the answer, it could like jump out of your hands and become something else. You got to keep chasing it. But because of that, and because of the noise of the world that we live in lately, I've seen a lot more fear-based decisions being made. Like, a lot of people, they're scared to be with their truth. Mm-hmm. So they write something other than. They write something they think that people will like. Maybe people will like me if I write this, instead of writing really what's bothering them, or what's inside of them. And when every time I ask a question online, or I'm talking in class, when you ask someone a question about what they want to write, you'll hear the words, I'm afraid, I'm fearful, I don't want to. And it's always embarrass themselves, or I guess the literary version of like dropping your pants in public and just being ashamed. And when you actually say, well, who's done that? Who in literature has expressed their trueness and embarrassed themselves? And you're like, oh, I actually can't think of anybody. Like, you can't think of anybody who got laughed out of out of being an honest creator. So I want to, where I can, just bring up the why we write, and talk about like where I am in the why. And for me, it was always about, I always talk about writing something that I would like to buy. Like, I want to make a comic book that no one else is making, right? And for me, that was always like a genre thing. Like, oh, this cool idea that I want, right? And that's where like Powers came from. Like, I would love to buy this book, and no one's making it. If Howard Chaykin was making this book, I would buy it, but he's not, so I'm going to have to go do it. So, and that would start me. And then, as I would dig into the characters, and I would find these deep emotional moments, and the moments would subconsciously have similar feels to them. Like, there would be a frustration about the world, or an anger about the world that was coming in through the characters, and then only when I read it back to myself in the balloon stage, in the lettering stage, would I go, oh, I'm working on some stuff, right? And I get fearful for students who are being taught to not dive in that deeply. I worry about it. Because there's two things going on in this culture. Number one, there's a lot of shaming online that I think, even if it's not shaming you directly, it makes people feel like, oh, I'll just stay in my little bubble. I'm not gonna express myself outwards, because there's a lot of people playing whack-a-mole with people's feelings online, right? And the other thing I see is that they don't. Because of the fear, they don't finish what they start. So they'll start a project and then not complete it, and then not know why they did it or what kind of creator they are. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Because it is, I see so many people, they want to show me their first 10 pages of something. And I'm like, I would love to see the last 10 pages, because I know that's why you wrote it, or that's why you're doing it. And if you don't write those last 10 pages, you're never gonna know what the point of you is.
So when you first started out, because as as Ed pointed out, you were an illustrator,
Yeah, I was a writer and illustrator.
writer-illustrator in Cleveland, correct?
Yes.
A newspaper? And so when you were deciding to make that leap into comics, first of all, why comics? And second of all, how did fear affect you?
Well, for comics, for me, and I think a lot of you will know this feeling, it's a very unique, intimate storytelling experience. You're alone in a room, and there's pictures, and I know when you're with a book, there's a very different but similar intimacy where you and the author are now creating a visual together, right? There's a word picture that you're creating, and I'm going to put it together with my values, and we're going to make it together. In comics, it's actually white space in between the panels that we can all now collaborate together, right? Like I'm gonna tell the story, but there's a lot of space in between these images where you, the audience, get to fill this in, and I love doing that. I absolutely love it, and I love when a creator tries to completely control all of the collaboration, yet you can't, right? When someone's trying to control the pacing and the timing of it, but the audience still has such a voice. Also, the audience has such a control over the tempo and the pace of the page, no matter what you do. So I love that as a reader, and I wanted to, and then as soon as you find out it's a job, like, oh, this is someone makes a living doing this, well, I can't think of a better way to make a living than that. So it was a very young age. I was like 6 or 7 years old when I read my first like credit box in a comic, and I went, oh, that's someone did this, that you can get paid? All right.
And you knew that was going to be you.
Yeah, I was in very early, and I can tell you what's fascinating to me is the realities of life set in, as like how many steps are between me and Spider-Man. Like from my bedroom in Cleveland at age 6 to Marvel Comics, there's a million steps. Nothing was standing in my way. There's absolutely but not like I wasn't like ruining people's lives together, but I was like, just geared towards. Sometimes when you say that, it sounds like, you're like, Gordon Gekko, you're just going to destroy everybody to get to your goal. But what I meant was I was going to earn my craft to get to that. And no matter how hard I found out it was, or what the odds were, nothing dissuaded me almost to a pathological. Now I can laugh at it, but like David Mack often will now think back about, boy, you were just deluded. You just went through life I'm going to be Spider-Man.
So basically, the hunger to create in this medium burned hotter than any fear or
Yes,
hesitation
yeah, I
you might
didn't
have.
know the fear, and I now feel very lucky that I didn't know the fear, because when I see people sometimes drowning in it, to be honest with you, I'll even see like some of my students will come to class, they have made the effort to get here, which is a big effort, and you could see, oh my God, they're terrorized to share themselves. And so I feel lucky that of all the neurotic issues that I've accumulated over the years, that was never one of them. So it did help me get to where I need to go. So now I do feel, as a creator and a professor, that now I can tell you, yeah, you don't need that fear. There's legitimate stuff to be afraid of in this world. Expressing yourself is not one of them. Yeah, to me at least.
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of students here on campus who would love to take that leap to becoming a writer, to being in the arts in some way, but they just don't even, they don't even know how to get there if it's possible. And I think the great thing about hearing you speak about this is that a dream you can have as a child can manifest.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
can actually do this.
Absolutely, and so many of our peers, like we all that's it. We just decided we're going to do this, and they're like, there's no one in comics who was going to be. Well, I was either going to be a lawyer or in comics. It was like not like even Charles, who was like he became a lawyer and said, "Nah, I want to be in comics." Even
That was me.
Yeah.
Well, so, and I think.
That deep need to be in comics or film or music or whatever it is. Everyone who ends up doing it shares that.
And so, do you think that comic books connect more powerfully with readers than other narrative mediums?
I do, and I do feel that that's why even with print medium being in chaos for the last 10 years, comics and graphic novels always are healthy because, and they are. It's a shifting market, but the readers are there and the numbers are there, and it's because even with all of the television and movies, and really television and the amount of comic book television that there is out there is the thing that's most competitive to us, which is that there's like 1,000 episodes of Arrow for free on Netflix right now. That you like if you need to scratch that itch, it's right there, right? But still, people buy the comics because as cool as those shows are and as cool as the movies are, there's a deep intimacy and layers to the narrative in comics that movies and TV aren't there yet. They will get there because they're always chasing us, but I honestly, it's the thing I was most stunned by when I saw the first episodes of Jessica Jones is that they went there. I was terrified that they weren't going to.
You were involved in that television show, correct?
I was a consultant, you know, and I was there, and the consulting is always writers asking you questions they know the answers to. They just want you to hear you say it.
Right.
And when you don't, they get angry. It's very funny. And there's a lot of questions about Luke and Jessica, and they wanted my answer, and I would have given them. Anyway, so yeah. So, but someone else is authoring this character in this medium, and you have to kind of get zen about it and hope for the best. So I was grateful that she went where other shows don't go. I was so grateful because I did not want the other thing. Yeah.
I don't think anyone did.
I know, but you know, it's our culture. There's a 90% chance it was going to be the other thing, so I'm relieved beyond comprehension.
Well, and you already mentioned Powers, but my first introduction to your work was Powers, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with Powers, it's about two detectives who investigate crimes committed by people with superhuman abilities. Is that kind of an
and
okay
what
summary?
Powers and Monstrous have in common is that we both have titles that everyone else in comics goes, oh, I can't believe no one took that title. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. I hear that so much about you, and we heard that about us.
Great.
The first 2 years, like everyone at Marvel, there's never been a book called Powers? I'm like, yeah, I know.
Sorry, guys.
Yes.
Well, I love that book, partly because it was so character-driven. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but soon after Powers was released, you started writing Daredevil, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I started writing Powers the year before I started at Marvel.
Okay.
And then Ultimate Spider-Man and Daredevil happened within like a few months of each other, in that even though Daredevil came out first, I was writing both at the same time.
So, my dude, having been in the situation of having written 3 comic books at once, that is a lot.
Oh, you should see what I'm doing now.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine.
I genuinely, and other people, we've lived long enough to know this. There are creators that can only do one project, and you even offer them a variant cover while they're in the middle of the project. They spiral out of control. They can't do it. While there's other creators that thrive with multiple projects going on at once, and I actually think the projects get better because all parts of the brain are being used at once. So that's where I have found myself to be. I've tried all the different ways, but multiple is where I thrive.
Well, I was going to ask another question, but I'll ask this
sorry.
one. No, not at all. I was happy for that response because it actually made me think about something else, because I know a lot of the students here they're familiar with having passion projects, but passion can get tiring sometimes.
Exhausting.
Exhausting.
Yeah.
And so for you, you seem to be someone, like you just said, like who gets energy the more you do and the more you're creating. How do you ever feel like you're running dry?
No, I also, such big things have happened in my life, particularly that it just keeps things constantly at a level of energy and good energy and enthusiasm and entertainment that I want. And, there's a constant stream of original art being thrown into my email. That's one thing. Once you start working on multiple projects, so like every day I wake up and Ryan Sook and Ivan Rice and David Mack and Michael Gaydos and Alex Maleev just keep flooding my like. I woke up this morning to 45 original pieces of artwork, and I can't get out of here fast enough to go start writing, right? And so that's the world I live in. So it's super exciting. I also, not to get too maudlin, I know it bums people out when you talk about it, but last year, literally almost a year ago this week, both me and my wife had a near-death experience, separate near-death experiences. And so we were faced with the real reality of it being done. It's over. And I had like days where I was blind and I couldn't write. So it was the first time where and there would always be days where no matter how like stressful the day is, I'm gonna go write it out. I'm gonna go just type, I don't even know what I'm gonna write. I'm just gonna type it out, and it was always there for me, and then it wasn't, right? So when it wasn't there for me for like, just for a few days, you go, oh no, oh Lord. So once you get out of a situation like that, you're like shot out of a cannon. Like you wanna, especially, not only that, but I was coming out of it at a time where DC was literally, we have whole lines of material to start producing that DC was so enthusiastic about us doing. So it was all this opportunity to write, and now, and having just a memory of what it feels like not to be able to keeps you very enthusiastic during the day. So the two things together are really, and also I get to pay my bills. Like when you
Money's
write,
good.
like a check comes when you're done.
Yeah.
So all these things, really enthusiastic way to keep writing.
Knowing that time runs out and money. These are all
I'm
good
a big fan of
motivators.
deadlines. I am. I know writers, sometimes I hate them. I think us in the deadline, if you embrace them, they will make you your best self.
I can't function without deadlines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually, going back to your earlier question that I never actually answered, in the earliest days of Powers, or in the early days in the 90s, when I was a young creator, even in college, I gave myself deadlines, and if I didn't hit my deadlines, I was fired. I literally was that nuts, and I was like, but I was like SEAL team.
You fired yourself?
No, I would like literally, well, I never missed my deadline because I was very serious, but I would take it so seriously. And like books like when we were working on Torso, like literally 900 people were buying it monthly. Like no one was buying it monthly, but I acted, if this book doesn't ship, the whole community of comics will collapse, and the whole Jenga of comics will fall. But I behaved that way, so by the time I got to Marvel, I was already behaving that. Like when now I'm doing Spider-Man and X-Men, and if this doesn't ship, yeah, something will happen. So I had trained myself well for the job that I wanted.
Well, it's such important training, because if you miss a deadline, then your writer misses a deadline. I mean, your artist misses a deadline. Your editor is completely stressed out. Your colorist is stressed out. Everyone is stressed out down the chain.
And for a nice Jewish boy like myself, who's raised on stress, and it's perfect. It is. All I can think about is making sure that, like, our colorists, and really the colorists really are the ones that get the short end of the stick. Like, they're the last step of the chain. So if everyone took a week, it's his week we stole, right? So his or her. So we want to make sure that we do that correctly. I think about that all the time. If I miss, they miss. And also, in comics, we see other creators doing this all the time. We see them messing up, and you see how stressful it is to an editor, and how you can really threaten an editor's job by messing up that way. Even like a brand new creator, if you mess up, you really can get your editor fired. And I don't think some creators even think that way or understand it, because their editor or their boss will go, where's this book?
Well, and it's one of these things that actually isn't talked about much, I think, in our industry, about how just missing a deadline is so problematic, can be so problematic, because this is a team effort, is a collaboration, not just between you and your artist, but between a bunch of different people who rely on you. Yeah,
and then there's the audience as well. Like I'm sure some of you have had this experience where you pre-ordered a book, and I recently got an Amazon update on a book that I ordered so many years ago that I was like, I literally had to Google to make sure the creator's still with us. I was like, I was like, holy Lord. So I know that feeling. I'm sorry, but it happened.
No, it does. It does.
But I know that feeling. So as a fan, you never want to do that. And life can happen. Like you can. Someone gets sick or pregnant, or things happen that can delay a book, but so you don't ever want to purposely, because of Red Dead Revolution 2, be the reason the book is not shipping. Yeah. By the way, and that is a very funny joke, but not to editors, because there's at least one artist I know who were waiting on artwork, and they literally tweeted, 19 hours Spider-Man PlayStation. And they're like, oh, dude. You can do the 19 hours on Spider, just don't tweet it at us. Don't tell us that's what you did all day. Yeah,
keep it a secret.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the transition like from indie to corporate? Were there any surprises, good or bad?
I lucked out because I had a lot of false starts. I had a lot of almosts and misses, and I was hustling. Like I was hustling from the age of 6 to get. I already decided Marvel needs me. Not that I need them. They need. Oh my God, I'll fix all their problems. I was incensed by their Raiders of the Lost Ark adaptation. Mine would have been so much better. Like, and it's insane talk because it's Klaus Janson. It's one of the great comic artists of all time. That's how nuts I was, right? So I've expressed this to Klaus. We've gone through this as creators. He understands that it was not a personal thing. And but I would constantly send in portfolio submissions it's funny how arrogant it was. So it's adorable how I was so sure that one of these is going to get in. And I'm so glad I went in there with so gung-ho because every time I got knocked down, it taught me a lesson. Mm-hmm. And going back to what we were talking about before about what people are afraid of. Oh, failure is so much fun. Failure, mm-hmm. People are terrified of it. They're so deeply terrified of it. And I have failed. And I'm not talking about commercial failure because that it really doesn't matter. Like I'm talking about creative. I'm talking about like owning your moment and having a moment and grabbing it and making the most out of it. And a lot of that has to do with getting to your truth. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, but the fear of failure so consumes people that they stop. They just freeze and distract themselves with something else, mm-hmm. and never even face the fact that not even knowing that was failure, not trying was and every failure has made me go, oh man, I feel so much better about myself having mm-hmm. failed so desperately, and I've done it publicly, and I've done it privately, I've done it, and I've done it on things where I've won awards for that I know I could do better, that I'll never speak up publicly because I'm not going to ruin the book for everybody, but I'm like, I could do better, and instead of talking about it publicly, and I always hate when actors do that when they tell you some movie they hate, right? I'm like, oh, but I like that movie. You don't have to tell me that, just do better in your next movie. Just take whatever you feel and do better the next time. So that's what I try to do, so.
Well, there's the novelist John Scalzi has a saying that I read years ago, and he said, "I'm too lazy to fail." And I think about that all the time, particularly because writing requires so much tremendous effort, and you're just working your ass off all the time. And yet, failure, I feel like, doesn't mean what we think of it.
No.
I'm too lazy to fail. I might fail at a book, but this idea that I would ever go back to doing anything else, never.
Yeah.
Absolutely never.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the only time I was faced with it full blast was I didn't get into the school of my dreams when I was in college, and my friend goes, "Oh, so I guess you'll go be a doctor," and I went, "What?" Like, I'm not giving up. What was that? The only time I remember being faced with the question, and then. So it was never going to be. But going back to the switch to mainstream, I lucked out because by the time I broke in, I had achieved a couple of things in independent comics that I didn't think I was ever going to get, like an Eisner. Like I didn't think that was going to happen. I wasn't down that track. And so when I got into Marvel, I had so many false starts. I had so many dashed and failed and just completely bizarre submissions that I had sent in over the years that by the time they offered it to me, I was ready. And also I was ready because it was Joe. It was like a creator was hiring me. So it wasn't some suit. It was one of us. It was a creator I really admired. It was one of my favorite artists called me up and said, "Your artwork sucks. You're a writer, let's get going," right? And I've told this story quite a few times, but it was, David Mack had been hired before me at Marvel Knights, and Marvel Knights was really producing some beautiful work and really was like the cream of the crop in mainstream comics at the time. And David was writing Daredevil, and I was like, "Show him my shit," like as soon as you get, we all do that, show my stuff. And he did, and he finally got to a place with Joe where he showed Joe a couple of my graphic novels. Joe called me right away. And then I literally was like, he goes, "What would you do if you came to Marvel? Like, where are your passions?" And I said, "Well, what do you need an artist for?" And there was like literally dead silence on the phone. And he goes, well, your artwork's not very good, Brian. He goes, your artwork sucks. He goes, you're a very good writer. He goes, I was assuming you were drawing to show off your writing. And I was like, no, but my initial feeling was that this is either going to be the greatest boss of all time, right? Or this is going to go badly in a few months. And because I've got a mom. You know what I mean? Like I got someone who's going to hang my stuff on the refrigerator and tell me I'm awesome. I need a boss that'll tell me the truth. Tell me, like, that's what you need in life. You need people who will constantly tell you the truth. So, and also, like, once you realize, oh, I'm now on the real stage of comics. And I remember, like, when I got Daredevil or Spider-Man, Joe had said, welcome to comics. And I said, I've been making comics for like 9 years. He goes, yeah, welcome to comics. And I didn't know what he meant. And then when my first Marvel comics came out, I was like, whoa, this is a way different experience. There's like actually people reading them. So yeah, it was, but I loved, but like all, the people who read independent comics love their comics. And it's a deep passion and it's tight and it was my message board and we're all buddies and friends and maybe there's people here from there that it's a real great bond. And then you get to hear from the Daredevil fans. That's a different experience, right? And it was all just building up to hear from the X-Men fans. That's the most hardcore of hardcore. Oh. Right? Yeah, and it was funny because even then I'd just done like 9 years on Avengers and I was taking over X-Men and a couple of X-Men creators of past went, get ready. I'm going, oh, come on, man. I've been writing Avengers. They go, oh, no. Every X-Men is someone's favorite. That's a very unique experience. That like there's others, there's a couple favorites, but every X-Men is someone's favorite. You're going to hear from everybody. So
no, it's the pantheon of the gods.
Yeah.
It's a religion.
And I feel like I climbed that. Like you're right. You climbed that. You climbed the wall that can't be climbed. And also the reason it's on my mind. I'm actually last night was writing an X-Men movie for Fox, which is very funny.
Brian.
It's funny. No, it's just because I'm so immersed in DC. I'm so deeply in living in the Daily Planet. Yeah, that it's funny to be back in the X-Mansion.
Well, I'm not going to ask for spoilers, even though I dearly want to. But congrats.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of gossip about what it is online. That's all I can say.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean.
But I can keep going with the transition because it was a big. Honestly, it was a big deal that moved to mainstream comics. I learned almost everything I really learned about comics. I learned in that first year at Marvel. Like,
what was the biggest thing you learned?
The relationship with the audience was a big one. I had such a snarky little like Don Rickles attitude about everything. My Powers Letter column was just me goofing on everybody and just having fun with it, and it was just having fun everywhere. And then when you get to Daredevil, we're not joking around anymore, buddy. This is Hell's Kitchen. Yeah. So yeah. But I enjoyed it. But even like when I got there, like there would be people like reading Spider-Man every week and screaming at me about it. And I'm like, well, why do you buy it if you don't like it? Like I don't understand. Like I'm confused by that. Like I can't get through 7 pages. If I don't like something, I'm out in 7 pages. I got kids. I got life. And so I flat out once asked the question. I said, what's the why are you buying this book and they said, oh, you like comic creators. I go, yeah. I go, well, we're like Marvel fans. We're like Yankees fans. Like, I'm going to give you a sports analogy. You're going to have to go look up, because I don't know sports at all. I go, but we're like Yankees fans, and we're going to scream the loudest if you win, and we're going to boo the loudest if you fail. And once that was opened up to me, I loved it. I completely played that game.
I've never heard that before, and now it makes sense.
I honestly, it was one of the guys on my message board said it to me, and it completely changed my stuff. I was so grateful, and I've said it a few times in interviews because I want whoever that person was to tell them, you completely made my life easier.
Was Joe your first editor?
Well, yeah, he was Marvel Knights with Joe and Nancy, and then literally I'd written like 2 issues of Daredevil, and they were written for like my best friend David Mack, and they asked us to like come in and do Daredevil because Kevin Smith is very late. And if you could just
This is
hold.
what happens when you miss a deadline.
No, but also, my career is filled with me being there when someone else blew a deadline. I tell this to every creator because my fortune has been made on other people blowing their deadlines. And Daredevil was a gig that it was someone else's job, and they didn't hand in their job. They go, here, you guys do a few issues, and then we did our few issues, and then they go, actually do a few more. He's going to come back eventually. And so my first run on Daredevil my first 6 issues was I thought I was like treading water for this big comeback, and then when he wasn't coming back. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and then I stayed. Yeah.
That's
And Ultimate Spider-Man was someone else's job. It was someone else had the job. And
no.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I don't say it to be mean to the other
No.
creators or anything, but it is when people ask what the magic trick is, show up.
Show up.
Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah.
Oh,
I stunned
damn,
you. I
man.
stunned you.
No, but
Yeah.
I mean, but also that's just awesome because it's you were such a phenomenally hard worker with so much passion, but it's opportunity meets, the skill, the talent, whatever, and it's, and that's how luck happens.
Well,
And
the other thing is people break in and they think that's it.
Yeah.
Though the easiest part is breaking in. It really is. You think it's the hardest part. It's maintaining is because it's not set up for the creator to stay.
No.
It's actually set up for the creator to be cycled out.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of make your own choices. And a lot of creators think that the publisher is making the choice for them, and they're not. They're just it's not. It's like, you're looking at the wrong thing. You have to make the choices yourself. So, and I was all very grateful that like Joe and the people in my life at Marvel were very helpful to me, and also making that clear. A no is a very powerful, good thing, and it's not a bad thing. Because some creators think that if you say no to a job, they're never going to ask me for never ever. No, it's not the case. They'll take you much more seriously. Like, you know your value.
Yes.
Yeah. Or good, you're not going to waste my time and write something that you don't like. Editors really admire a no. They really do.
My first editor was John Barber, and he is the reason why I was able to maintain a career at Marvel. But also, having been a novelist and having seen how people could be completely irrelevant after one novel, I also knew going in that the key, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't just that you get a book. It's about maintaining your presence and continuing to write and taking on projects. And that's a hard fought battle.
It is. It's shocking for some people to find out how much of life is like a video game.
Yeah.
And that you always you think you're going to hit the boss level, and no, that was just the door to the next thing. Yeah. It's
Keep clawing.
constant. Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter what. And doing that while all the time centering yourself on what you have to offer as a creator, what your truth is, what your goals are, is the most important thing. And for those sitting here, and I know there's quite a few writers in here looking for me to say that, and it's absolutely 100% true. You're gonna be constantly surrounded by people testing your ability to stay true to yourself. There's gonna be constant ask for compromise. Some of it's going to seem tiny, and some of it's going to seem enormous, and sometimes the enormous ones are going to seem so enormous you have to think about it for a while. Like, why am I being asked to make something red when I know it should be blue? Sorry about that.
That's right.
And so your job as a creator, no matter what, is to stay true to yourself. And by the way, you can do it being polite and lovely. You don't have to scream no at people when you because that happens a lot.
Well.
But I do think that kindness and passion, you can get a lot done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Now,
Also, the great thing about comics is that the wheels turn so fast that if you just come at them with a strong take, and again, I know this is one of the things that people think I'm in a privileged position, but you're talking about my first years at Marvel. I did not have a privileged position, but I would come at them with such a strong take on Spider-Man that they went, okay, it's either yes or no, and this time it was yes. After 9 years, it was a yes. So and the wheel has to turn so quickly, they don't have time to really to second guess you until next issue.
No,
you
it's
can
true.
really keep going for a while.
I've used that trick.
It's
I've
a
used
good
that
trick.
Yeah.
It's not one. It's one that you don't do like evilly.
No.
But you go, oh, yeah. Or at least I don't.
No, but if you wanna slip in a couple moments in your story that are a little bit more progressive than what other people might want, it's a good opportunity to do so. You just do it. Well, since this actually segues nicely because you've actually, since you started at Marvel, gone on to sort of shape much of what we know about the Marvel Universe.
It's hard for me to see it that way.
Okay, well, for the rest of us, I mean.
There was an enormous amount of people in any room I was in.
Sure.
Always. So
Okay.
it's always I always felt that to me like I had a front row seat to it more than the way you wording it. I had an outstanding seat to one of the great pop culture stories of our generation. I was there when they were in bankruptcy. Like when my first visit to Marvel, they were selling filing cabinets for cash. There was actually a Post-it note on a pile of filing cabinets that said sold on them, and the lights were off in the bullpen. And you've visited, right?
Oh yeah, no, I've heard the stories also about
Yeah.
how they limited toilet paper
Yeah.
in the bathrooms because it would cost too much.
Yeah, so I was there for that, and then I was there for this. So
Yeah.
it's been quite a. There was genuine times where I thought, oh, am I writing the last Marvel comic? What an honor! I literally said, well, if I'm writing the last Marvel comic, really, really bring it home because it really felt that way. You're literally like, oh, they hired me because everyone else left. It really felt, a lot of people went off to video games, and me and David were there going, oh, at least we get to do it once. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, it did, but but the other version was that in bankruptcy, in complete devastation comes, hey, let's roll up our sleeves and go nuts. Let's everyone just tell crazy stories, and there's like, listen, if we're closing the doors, we might as well go out swinging. And so there was that kind of feeling too, and the boss who was running it was determined not to let the doors close, so he was making deals with Payless Shoes and getting Ultimate Spider-Man in every shoebox in the country, and so there was a lot of genuine movement to get the ships running, but with hiring me and Mark Miller and a few other people was definitely like, hey, let's let them do it. Everybody, nothing else is working, and with that comes genuine enthusiasm, like if we're kind of creating for the right reason,
Well, Jim Lee calls you an impact player. And
what does that mean?
I assume
I'll have to Google that later.
I assume it means good things.
I hope so, yeah.
And that you make a lot of changes, good changes. And I was just, I'm not going to ask you for like long-term spoilers as far as the DC universe goes, but what has been one of the great joys and difficulties in the transition to DC?
Well, first of all, and we're talking about fear earlier. The move to DC terrified me. It was deeply scary, and there's quite a few things I've done this year that I've been as scared creatively as I've ever been, and I'm so. If I may, deeply proud of myself for putting myself in this situation yet again, where I could have I could have picked things that I could have relaxed a little bit. But this whole year has been just a holding on to the railing, thing. But the plus for me was, and the choice was made before I got sick, was getting to write Superman all year. After everything that me and Elisa had been through, and everything that's going on in the world, and trying to raise my multiracial family in this increasingly stressful nightmare world that we're growing in, having to spend hours a day trying to think, what would the best person do? Like, all he can do is the best thing. What's the best thing? And it makes me feel of this David Mamet line from the movie Heist that I used to quote all the time, but now I'm kind of living it. It's Gene Hackman is this thief, and they go, "How did you come up with this great plan?" He goes, "I thought of a smarter person, and I thought, what would they do?" Right? and I literally, that's how I think when I'm writing Superman. Oh, I did it. Superman is I think.
Turn the video.
He's better than me, what would he do, right? And so you have to spend hours a day thinking what the best thing you could do is. And then when you're out in the real world, you can't then go fight with people at the grocery store. You're thinking like Superman. I'm being much more helpful. I'm being much more, can I help you with that, ma'am? I'm doing that a lot more than I used to do. And I find my parenting zen, the calm you have to have when faced with, and I have 4 kids, so we can really get a circus going. It's much more potent. I do everything but the hands on the hips, so I'm insanely grateful for Superman being in my life right now at this age, and I think a lot about how much of Peter Parker is inside me, and how much of that nervous energy that I poured into my pages that I lived with, and now as a more mature man, I have a more centered energy, and now I'm more tapped into that.
Yeah.
So I find that fascinating, and Miles is quite in the middle there. So I've always kind of journeyed with my energy without being conscious of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful for that. The hardest thing is DC continuity. It's holy Lord! It's like you're
Wait,
reading.
it's worse than Marvel?
Yeah, well, Marvel never rebooted. For all of its mishigas, Marvel is a straight line, right? It's a straight line, but but there have been start and stops.
Oh.
So you could be reading a graphic novel and then find out, oh no, this doesn't count, right? So that is the biggest.
Oh, I can see that would be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, but honestly, there was like a DC Universe year-by-year visual book that helped me put it all together. It was so great. One of those big giant DK books,
Okay.
It helped me just line it all up and make some choices for myself that was really, really great. So yeah, okay. Of all the things, this really helped me. Yeah, because I'd read almost all of it, and also how interesting it is to have read so much stuff as a fan, never giving it any potent brain power, like what would I do with Batman? Like I never actually went there because I have so much of that part of my brain is in use right now. I never was fantasizing about what, Legion of Superheroes would be. Like I never thought of it, but now, so rereading this material as someone who could actually help author this is really unique. Oh, it's so exciting. It's deeply exciting. And also just to look at some of the choices other creators have made that I may not have understood at the time, but now I can understand them. Like as a creator with a little bit more under my belt. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So both things, and also I must say there's something genuinely awesome about living in the DC universe right now because it is not our world. It's a different. You know what I mean? There's different. It's Marvel is our world. It's New York City and Chicago and L.A. DC is Metropolis, Gotham. There's a disconnect that now lets us get to more truth. You know what I mean? Now we're in a fantasy world, like in Monstrous. So now I can really talk about some stuff because I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just talking about real stuff.
Got it.
Yeah. So that I love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about taking questions?
I want to take some questions.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Oh. My pleasure.
Conversation thus far. So that we can include you in the videos, we do need people who want to ask questions to please go to these mics that are in the hallway, or in the walkways here, the stairways.
And I will say that if you have specific questions about your writing that you say, I don't want to ask that in a microphone, do it, because you'll be surprised how many people are feeling the same feeling or expressing the same, are having the same frustrations. So. Or we could just go. Here we go. You could do it.
Writing can be...
Right, don't be shy.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity.
There we go.
I love the awkward.
Right, over here, go ahead.
Hi, so I think the death that you gave Peter Parker in your run for Ultimate Spider-Man is, I honestly think it's one of the most beautiful comic moments I've ever seen.
Thank you.
How did you feel when another writer decided to just drag the dead horse back out?
Oh no! I dragged that horse out. I wanted that horse back out.
What motivated you to do that?
I knew I was leaving, and I wanted to put the toy back for other writers to have. Why should they be denied what I was given, which is that playground that I loved? And I often think what I would want if I was the other creator, and I'll just do that. Because you hear through, and we've both heard these horrific stories of creators just screwing over other creators, like with storylines or just editorial decisions that they knew was going to mess them up. And I would like to go through life never having anyone ever said that about me.
It was just interesting since like your run with Miles Morales was great, and I thought you'd beautifully just set him up as like the mainstay in the Ultimate Universe since it was removed. But regardless, that's cool.
Thank you. No, you know what? I just thought we got to a place where we could have both, and I think the movie proves me right. So, yeah.
All right, we'll go over here.
I rarely have proof that I was right about anything, so.
I got to via Powers. That was my first introduction.
Thank you.
And I hadn't really actually read the Marvel bits. But on are you going to do any more Powers Bureau? And secondly, could you discuss a little bit, since you were, I didn't realize you were an artist. I'm not that familiar with your background. Your cooperation as a writer with your artists. And
Yeah.
if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Two things. Number one, yes, the good news, great. I have Powers good news, which is that the 20th anniversary, because we're old people, is this summer. And so DC Comics will be releasing a brand new Powers graphic novel that's already written and drawn. And we're actually adding a lot more onto it because when we realized it was the 20th anniversary, we're going to make it a very special celebration. We're not putting it out as a miniseries, but as a graphic novel, so no one has to wait. They can just have it because we're sorry for the wait. So yes, 2 more Powers, and it's pretty big. It's like 180 pages long, so there's a lot to show you there. And Powers is actually a great example of why I'm not drawing. Because literally when I first met Mike Oeming at a signing in Philadelphia, me and David Mack and Mike Oeming, we just didn't really know each other. We were coming buds on the road. And Mike was developing what would become his Power style. And he went home and he sent over drawings of my character Jinx and David Mack's character Kabuki in that style that he was drawing. And I immediately would have rather that book be in Mike's style than my style. Like immediately was like personally as a fan, I would rather read this than what I'm doing. And I called up David and I said, are we going to fight over him or can I just have him? Because clearly we need to work with him. And so and Mike and I were not friends. We did not know each other. And I called him up and I said, I have this idea. It's a homicide book, and he literally that night sent in the first drawings of Christian Walker, and Mike was over my house 2 nights ago, and I can tell you that he's like my brother. So I went from like throughout the creation of Powers and everything we've been through and the TV show and all that, having just created my family around that is quite something. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Marjorie, do you want to mention your relationship with your artist, with Monstrous?
Yeah, because that was the first question I asked you when I saw you today was about how you guys work together.
I actually met Sana when we were working on X-23. She was the fill-in artist initially, and then I loved her work so much. It was so evocative that I requested her when our actual artist, went off to do other things. I think he was pulled, for an Avengers event or something. And so...
Is this me you're talking about?
Actually, I don't think
Okay,
so. I
okay,
think I don't think so. But
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
So it worked out for me, a great opportunity because we just totally, I fell in love with her style. She was absolutely amazing. But, and what's happened since then is that, we're doing Monstrous and, she lives in Japan. When we first started out, she didn't speak any English. She had an translator. And so she would get the scripts in English, they would be translated into Japanese, and then she would just draw them. And she would draw her X-23 books in like 2 weeks. I swear to God, this woman was like a beast. She would just whip them out. And Monstrous now takes her about 6 to 7 weeks per issue. But the detail and what she pours into this book, our collaborative process, for me is like having a psychic bond with someone. because even before we started writing the first issue, I would give her notes, and the barest notes, and she would come back with these character designs that were as if she had reached into my head and pulled out my dreams. It was actually incredibly profound. And so whenever I get pages from her, it is like I'm seeing someone just manifest my imagination on the page. It's one of the most beautiful things I've experienced, and I've worked with a ton of amazing artists. But Sana, whatever we've got going on, I have no words for it, but it's special. And sometimes in this business, that's what makes it really beautiful, when you collaborate with an artist and you click. Something happens. And no matter, the rest of the world could hate your work and be like, this is the worst thing we've ever read, but between you and this other creator, it's magic. And for me, that's one of the reasons why I write comics, because I love the medium, but also because I love the collaborative process and I love that magic.
Great. Well, and I was telling you, Sana really upsets a lot of other artists because it's so intricate. Because there's literally two things she does that are antithetical to like what most comics are, which is she designed costumes that are so elaborate that she now has to draw in every panel that elaborate, because now that book is about elaborate design, right? So. And it made me laugh because I thought like Joe and Sarah Pacelli were designing Miles Morales' costume, and they did the reverse web line, which is so hard to draw. Ask anybody. It's literally the opposite of easy. And Joe came up with it and then left, and then so all these artists are stuck drawing the hardest costume, right? And she's doing it with glee. Like in Monstrous.
Well, I don't know of Glee, but she's definitely doing it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. But you definitely have that thing once you're like working with someone who doesn't even speak the same language as you, but it's working, and you know it's working on this other level. You're like you just want to run it and scream to everybody, "It shouldn't be working!" It's the best feeling in the world.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
over here.
Hi. First of all, thank you. There's been so much of your work that's meant so much to me, so
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Secondly, as far as the question, you mentioned there being so much of Peter Parker in you, and I assume that's kind of a two-way street. How do you?
Isn't everything though?
Well, yeah, like as a writer, that's what you have to do, but how? Like I'm working on a project right now that's one of those things where like the fear makes it really easy to want to stop, and I don't think I can, but it's so much of me that it's hard to get that out, especially like a character who's a different generation, for example.
You may have heard people talk about this online. It's very hard to talk about, but what you need to do is to get into almost a Zen state when you're writing, which is, I'm not saying like alter yourself, but stop thinking about all the stuff you're thinking about. Just don't think about anything about what this character needs to do right now. Like right this second, what does this character need to do, right? And if you have trouble even getting there, you can start with the easiest thing you can do in genre, which is take your character and put them in the place they least want to be, all right? Whatever that is. And let's say you're writing about you. Where's the place that you least want to be at the moment? And then put yourself there and then write yourself out of it, all right? And just do that. And by doing that, you've now created almost like a survivor story where you're not even thinking about anything but how can I get out of this situation? And then you're going to read back what you wrote and go, oh, I wrote all that stuff I was worried about. It's all in there. All right, all that stuff happens, but only when you literally stop thinking about it. It's literally like if you stop thinking about being single. You know what I mean? Like if you, like, it's the same thing. Like well, the minute you stop thinking about it, you meet the perfect person, right? It's the same thing. Just stop thinking about it, and you will get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. And I know it's one of those things that's easier to do than say, but I talked to a lot of creators about it, and it really is. You gotta just get there. I'm done worrying about it. I'm just gonna do it. And then sometimes it's always a matter of just looking at one other creator, going, "Oh, they did it, and they're stupid. I'm gonna do it." Yeah. So, and I know that I'm that for a lot of people. There are people who read my scripts and go, "He can't even spell," and he got in. So yeah, get in. There you go. Sorry.
Hey, Mr. Bendis, I've been a big fan for a long, long time.
Thank you.
I'm a little nervous, actually.
Oh, don't be. Thank you.
I kind of got like a two-part question. I was wondering what you thought about of the Heroes in Crisis like story. And you know how like writers decided the fights, like anybody could beat anybody. Who would win a fight between Captain Marvel and Superman if you were to write that?
Oh, who would win in a fight between Captain Marvel and Superman?
Yes, sir.
Oh, Superman. But to ask your,
Thank you.
to your earlier question, now, I do love Heroes in Crisis. And I'll tell you why. What Tom is bringing is real truth. He has lived a life and has feelings and has no problem putting them on the page, and is doing so almost in like a punk rock kind of like way that I think is very, very good for comics, and is exactly what I'm speaking of. And I can point to, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's his truth. And for me, who never had PTSD in my life up until this year, I'm actually genuinely grateful for him. Like, I got to read the first 3 issues of Heroes before anyone else did, and I was like, I genuinely don't know if this is just what I needed right now, or this is the best thing you've ever done, because this hit me. It punched me right in the chest,
Yeah,
and
it's
made me feel
definitely-
better.
Definitely hooking. Like,
Yeah, and
I can't
go,
wait for the next issue.
I can't even tell you how many comics have made me feel that way. You can count them on a hand, like deeply, like hit me, right? So I was grateful for it. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. It's good to meet you. Thank you.
Hey, just want to say thanks to both of you for putting this event on. This has been great.
Thank you.
When you said earlier, you know, learning how to say no to a project, that seems really odd to me just because in my day job, you're taught you never say no to a project, right? You always say yes, you take on more work, you put more on your plate. When do you know when to say no?
Well, it's different for freelancers. There's a different, I've never had a real job, but I know people who have, and they've told me about it. So I know that there's a different, there's different ways to success in different things. But for freelancers, every time you take a job, it could be Scrooge McDuck. You're giving of yourself. You're putting your name on something, and you're putting yourself out there. It is a piece of you, and you really should take that under consideration. And you know what, man? I'm not taking away from, like, you know what? I need to pay my rent. And I did a Star Trek gig to pay my rent, but okay, find my truth in there. Absolutely, you absolutely take a gig, but then find yourself, find a reason that makes it special that you did it. So.
Mind answering it also, Marjorie?
Oh, for me.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, I've gone through certain situations in my life as a writer where I have been asked to do certain things. Like one of the first big questions I was ever asked that I had to say no to was that an editor wanted me to change my name because it was thought that a Chinese name wouldn't sell books.
What?
Yeah. And I said no to that. And so you get questions like, if you're a person of color, sometimes you get questions like that. I was asked to make a character white because they didn't like the fact that the hero was brown, and that they didn't want to have to put a brown person on the cover of the book. Mm. And I had to say no to that. Now that's just with novels.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. I mean, comics aren't entirely safe, but it was a little. They're not
Comics have problems.
Yeah, they're not entarily off the hook. But
No, I was thinking, I couldn't even think of who you were talking about.
This was when I started out my career as a novelist. When it came to Marvel, for example, I was actually pretty lucky at Marvel to work with fantastic people. But towards the end of my time at Marvel, not including Han Solo, I got to the point where I was just itching to do something else. You know, when you write corporate comics, at a certain point sometimes, you're writing for a corporation. You don't own the characters. And that's something that's easy to forget, because I became so invested in characters like X-23 and the X-Men and all of that. And then all of a sudden you're like, it doesn't matter how much you remind yourself that they're not yours. At a certain point, you forget in order to invest yourself in the writing.
The way the universe keeps reminding me is crazy. Miles is on the can of Campbell's soup this week. There's Campbell's soup cans.
Yo,
it's
really?
crazy. Yeah, no, I didn't know that was a goal of mine until I saw it. I go, I'm so proud of myself.
You're like, yes. and so I got offered, towards the end, I got offered 2 books, and I would have Under certain circumstances, I would have loved doing them, but I realized the corporate controls were going to be such that I couldn't tell the story I wanted to tell. I couldn't. And I decided that it was time for me to do independent comics. I had to leave. I didn't have a project. I didn't have Monstrous at that point. I didn't have anything to cushion the fall. I just knew I couldn't do this anymore. I had to write my own thing. And so I said no. I said no to 2 big books that, otherwise might have been great to do, but I was done. So it happens.
Yeah, and by the way, you could hear these stories going back. The Terry Gilliam story is that they wanted him to do the hottest script in Hollywood was Enemy Mine. And he said, no, I got a better script. It's Brazil. They go, better than Enemy Mine? And then they made his movie. That's a no is very, very sexy.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
It really is.
No is powerful.
Yep.
I have 2 questions, one short and one long. The short one is you said 3 words that really hit my heart, which is a legion of superheroes. So is there anything you can say about them?
They're cool.
Yeah, because Legion fans want them to come back. They're worse than X-Men fans, I
All I
think.
could say is that if someone was preparing a run on Legion Supers, it is easily the hardest job to prepare reference and research for that they could ever imagine. But that's all I heard that. I don't know if that's true.
Okay. And then second, I grew up in a time where it was letter columns that you learned how people felt about a book, and that was 5 months after the issue came out. And now you've got Twitter where people will give full reviews in 140 characters. And so my question to really both of you is, how do you interact with fans that way? Do you read blogs? Do you check tweets? Do you shut them all out? Do you go to places like CBR or Bleeding Cool and read what they have to say? Do you go to message boards do you immerse yourself in what fans have to say, or do you distance yourself, or is it a mix?
I'd like to hear your answer on this.
I am not, ever since the 2016 election, I've been pulling myself off Twitter because it just became too stressful. And I realized that I could be an advocate and an activist in ways that didn't involve 140 characters, but that involved actual real-life, feet-on-the-ground work, also including the work I was doing, the writing. But even before that, I didn't read reviews. I never read reviews as a novelist. I didn't go to Amazon and scour, I didn't do it because, and occasionally, you can't always escape reviews. And if they were negative, I read the negative reviews and I was grateful for them because I inevitably learned something. Criticism is good. You can learn a lot. And sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not, but you take what you think is useful and you incorporate that. Because as a writer, I am always learning. There has never been a point in my life where I thought, damn, I got this. Because I don't.
Yeah.
I just don't. Yeah.
We know a couple of people who genuinely feel that way once in a while. And like Mark Miller, he says it online all the time. So it's not like we're gossiping. He constantly goes, nailed it. I've never felt that. I've never felt that.
Never.
And he genuinely feels it. And sometimes he's right. He nailed it. But I've never, ever felt that in my life.
Never felt that way. And so, yes. And so, and also, I think that for me, I love my readers, and I have really great interactions with my readers, for the most part, and thankfully. But I will, when I was on Twitter mostly, I would engage every now and then. But for me, to meet a reader in real life and engage, that's why I do Comic Cons, because I like seeing people face to face and talking with them, and actually, having a conversation. And I grew up before social media. I didn't have the internet until I was 18. I grew up having conversations with people. And I hate to sound so old, but I miss that. I miss that. And that's kind of what feeds me.
Yeah, and I was lucky. I came up while the social media of comics was building itself. I had a message. I was one of the first message boards, and when I was indie, and so I kind of grew up with as it evolved. So I was able to gently make the mistakes you would make, which is, oh, they're over there talking about Ultimate Spider-Man, I'll chime in. Oh, they actually did not want me to chime in. No, you learn that. You're like, oh, we're all friends. We'll come and I can help with this conversation. Oh no, that was their conversation, and you ruined it by showing up over there. So you learn that, and yeah, you learn just to stay in your lane. And if people need you, they come find you. Like, there's no reason to venture forth. Everyone has their own space. You don't need to. But what I feel deeply honored by, to be honest, and this is because I've gotten to work with so many of my heroes, is that they'll tell you, like Bill Sienkiewicz will tell you, when he was on New Mutants, they got 2 letters. He had no idea he was blowing our minds. He had no idea. He was just sitting in his room going, well, I'm taking some big shots here. I hope everyone likes it. And had no idea that he was like altering us, like literally changing our lives. So I'm genuinely grateful that like every Wednesday, and it does feel like, and instead of in sports, every given Sunday you're the hero or the villain of the game. For comics, it's every given Wednesday. It's every Wednesday I've done right, or whoa, and most of the time I've genuinely no idea what it is that's gonna set people off, good or bad, and that's an exciting feeling.
Adventure.
It is. I genuinely love the adventure. And as far as critique goes, I have found that most of it is very truthful and honest, and that you can, and the ones that aren't, you can tell right away. Like when you see a reviewer talking about it, they wrote the book. I'm like, okay, you're coming from a different place, right? But when you read a review and it's painful, you go, oh, that's true. Mm-hmm. Then you know that's true. If that really hurt your feelings, then this is true. And I've read like a rave review of something where I said, well, that's not true either. It is not. It's got some problems. I know what the problems are. I will do better next time, right? But so I've had the experience of both not having my mind changed with someone hated something and I loved, and like it's usually, well, it's my baby. The one that everyone is crapping on you, that's the one you hug the most, right? And other things that people have been very generous to me about, it hasn't made me love it anymore, if that makes sense. But instead of just focusing on that, I apply it to the next thing. Like, okay, well then, how I'm feeling now, I should apply to this issue of Superman and make it more honest and more true, and do all those things. So I think it's, but just spending all day online reading about yourself could not be more of a trap. That, like, holy Lord, that is not what, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be researching your work and helping other creators with their work. That's what you should be doing online. And if I'm sitting there obsessively reading about what people think about the 3rd season of Jessica Jones or something, that's I know it's not
like
out yet,
internet masturbation. You're just basically just like.
Yeah, ego surfing,
Yeah.
and I think I read a quote by Maya Rudolph of all people in Interview magazine, and she said that she realized that a lot of people on Saturday Night Live were sitting around reading every review, every tweet, everything, and then they would only be satisfied when they read the worst thing they could possibly read about themselves. Like you could skip over 100 good comments about, wow, that was funny, blah, blah, blah. When someone says something so brutal, you go, woo! Like, and then she realized it was like a version of like cutting. Like you're literally trying to hurt yourself. You're literally looking for a way to make yourself feel bad so you can feel good. Mm-hmm. And once you realize that, stop. You've got to stop that immediately. So that's so it's been many, many years since I've ever.
Thanks so much. I can help with the Legion if you need it.
So what was that? I'm sorry? I didn't hear it. What did you say?
I actually didn't hear it either.
Thank you.
Yes, over here.
Which one's Chameleon Boy? No, I'm sorry.
Hi, Brian. I've been a fan since the Spiral issue of Torso, so a long time. Good to see you healthy. It's really good.
Thank you.
I know Chaikin's a big influence. I know Mamet's a big influence. I also know you're a huge Howard Stern fan, and I want to know what your experiences are, growing up with that, and has that influenced you? I know you've had some run-ins with him. I want to hear about that kind of stuff.
I did. I haven't listened in a few years. It was the 4th child was the one that was it. That was when choices had to be made, and I'm bummed out because the show has evolved into the interviews lately. The Neil Young. I do hear the big interviews. Like he did an hour and a half with Neil Young that was just riveting, just about process. It's become a process
Yeah, oh yeah.
junkie show, and of all the things you think that show would have turned into, that's kind of amazing. But yeah, years ago, I got a call from Joe Quesada who said, come to New York this week. We have a meeting with Howard Stern. And I was like, what? And I was like, as in you can get, and he goes, and we were literally in Howard Stern's apartment talking about making a superhero franchise for him. It was weird. It was a weird day, and I loved every second of it. And it was actually a day he actually took himself off the air to show that the FCC, what it'll be like if the FCC goes after him. And so we were there where he was like shot off cannon. So we're in his like penthouse apartment in Central Park West, overlooking the universe. And the tallest man in the world met this little Jewish man, and yeah, it was like meeting. I felt like Frodo. It was, yeah, and we sat and talked about comic books and making a superhero out of Howard Stern, and I knew it was never going to happen in a million years. I knew this was the meeting he was taking as the serious deal was being put together, and I didn't mind it at all. Usually, you get into meetings like that, you're like, oh, this is not a real meeting. You've had those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you go, oh, this isn't real. And so, but that one, I was like, I'm completely entertained. I'm getting my own private Howard Stern show. And it went on for like 9 hours. It was great.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was the best. Yeah.
Just want to say thank you. I've been a fan since way back, and Ultimate Spider-Man was incredible, and Superman is my all-time favorite, so when you made the announcement you were moving over, I was as thrilled as could be. Are there any characters like Con-El that you knew out the gate you wanted to play with when you moved to DC? Like, are there any things that you're like, if I could finagle things that I could play with that guy, I would love to. I would love to play with that.
You're genuinely seeing them. Like this is it. You're like Wonder Comics is a perfect representation of what I thought Elisa and I could bring to DC that they weren't doing, that wasn't there. And when the idea of the pop-up imprint was floated by me, it was an empty bowl. Like I could fill it with anything, and I was like, oh, and my first instinct was, oh, I'll make a bunch of crime comics, and then I realized, oh, Jinx World is a bunch of crime. I'm actually doing a handful of crime comics right now, but boy, all these characters that I love aren't in any book at all, and so Young Justice, and I said like an ultimate line, but like with a different purpose, but with a different. But with a similar kind of, these characters are at that moment where they're discovering themselves, and that's a great thing that comics has, and so Young Justice and Wonder Twins and Dial H for Hero, but it's also having Dial H for Hero by Sam Humphries. Like I'm very selfishly making a comic book that I would like to have a copy of, like that literally is. I've never felt so selfish, and Wonder Twins. Yeah, I wanted to buy Wonder Twins, and I literally was like, well, I wouldn't just buy any Wonder Twins. I would want DC to show me someone where I'd go, oh, I have to buy that. And Mark Russell, who just did Flintstones, and he's absolutely that guy. So we're making comics that I desperately would buy. Yeah, and so the characters too, all of them will be showing up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, has it been weird watching Scarlet come true?
Yes, it is, because I do a book called Scarlet that takes place in Portland, and things keep happening in Portland at the same locations that happened in the book that we did photo reference of, and that's very strange. Yeah, it's very weird, and I was going to ask you about this about Monstrous as well, because Monstrous reflects, it was born in a different world, right? Monstrous was born years ago in a different world, and now it's existing in this world.
What do you mean in a different world?
Well, it was before 2016. It was created, right?
That was it was a very different world.
No, because Scarlet was born
Yeah.
in the Obama years,
Yeah.
and now it's reflected of a completely different society but reflects its truth differently than I planned, but gets there faster. And I'm amazed by it. I've never had that feeling before. I've never had a narrative alter itself because of the real world, and not alter itself, but it reflects differently to the audience sees it differently.
Well, it's weird because sometimes as a writer, in my life, I've wondered sometimes if unconsciously, and not just me, but I've talked with other writers who feel the same way, that if unconsciously in the moment of creation, we're not like picking up on something, because so often the work that we do years later or not so many years later, it is in the right moment. You know, it's as if we could tell the future, or we could pick up on a thread of the future, and we were writing something that there was going to be a need for, or that would, you know, raise questions that were appropriate for the time that we found ourselves in. And it's a very strange sensation when that happens.
The new police commissioner a police captain in Portland, her last name is Justice. And I'm like, oh, I would never name my character Justice. But it's, anyway.
Over here.
Thank you guys for being here. My question is really centered around endings because we live in this culture of, you know, what's next. You know, there's no cohesive ending for something. And as a, you know, writer and artist myself, I struggle with crafting the ending that feels satisfying while trying to balance the urge to keep pushing forward and to like make that next thing because I'm genuinely excited. So I'm just wondering if you had advice.
It's something I wrestle with all the time. It's one of those things there's no right or wrong answer for, and every project and character offers their own solutions, right? And at first, I come from the Stan Lee school, which is every comic is someone's first and last, and it's your fault either way. And that is that. So that cliffhanger, you know, Stan never ended a story. It never fully ended. It was always like, even if it was a big win and a happy ending, but then there was something else, right? So there's always another reason to pick up the next issue. So I'm a big believer in that. And also, it's a reflection of life. It never. There's always something else. You always like you solve that problem. There's a new problem. So I focus on making the moments as true as possible. So the ending then becomes inevitable, right? It's the only ending the story could possibly have, and we couldn't have possibly ever saw it coming. That's the goal for a great ending of a story, right? Isn't that how it's said? That it's the, like when people see it, they go, that's the only ending it could have ever had.
Great.
And
We're going to get through every questioner here if we can. Am I cutting you off?
No.
Well, I was going to, never mind.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to add on just really quick that there's something about a beautiful ending, and I think because I come from writing fanfic many years ago, that allows for also, in addition to that, possibilities. You allow the reader possibilities to continue dreaming of these characters. And I think that's something else that a great ending does.
Lost in Translation, the movie, that's the perfect ending to that movie, all right? They go their separate ways with a secret that's none of our effing business, right? So it can be as elegant as that. And that's what I think about often, that it doesn't have to be the Death Star explodes. It can be, I love you. And I couldn't say those words till now. That's a great ending to a story.
Thank you.
Right.
Hey, Brian. I just want to say thank you for co-creating Miles, because I relate a lot to Spider-Man, and it's like cool to see a character. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of characters like that, like quote unquote, look like me. You know, like Rocket and stuff like that. Yeah. So
thank you, man.
It's just cool for that, especially when the movie's gonna come out. I'm gonna take my little cousin, so that's gonna be cool.
And it's good. It's a good movie.
I know, right?
I'm so excited because I didn't have anything to do with making it, so I can say this without any ego, and I can say it with I was holding my breath, going, please. Yeah, it's really something.
I can still tell him, like, I kind of met the guy that made him. But anyway, so two things. The second one's kind of long, but the first thing is I'm a big fan of legacy characters, and I wanted to know if maybe you were gonna in the future introduce like the JSA into like Superman or Action Comics, like not so much for Superman, but for Jonathan, because it's just kind of like to.
Jonathan. Kind of I'm also obviously a huge fan of legacy characters as well, and DC is a completely unique animal in that area. So there's so many characters that are legacy characters that are sometimes abandoned. You know what I mean? So like even like the Young Justice, like all those characters aren't being written right now. So I want to get going for there. What's coming with John is a very, very special, unique storyline that's going to take up this whole run of Superman. He's coming back next issue, and he's coming back with an entirely huge story that happened with him and his grandfather and his mother out in space. and we're gonna show you some stuff about John and the Superman family we've never seen before, which I'm excited about. And it's all a reflection, getting back to truth, a reflection of having all my children and all of them having a very unique perspectives and unique abilities and unique needs, and reflecting that onto Superman and his son is it's a very joyful thing for me. So
The second thing I wanted to ask is it includes about your family also, because as a creator of characters that are people of color, is it I want to know about like the kind of the process, because I know you said you have a multiracial family, so I want to know like how that, especially like as a white male, like it's how does that work exactly, like the process?
It's number one. Sometimes it's never as complicated as, boy, I'm very aware of what my kids are like taking in this culture, and the voices and the characters that they see. And for kids of color, though it is much better than it used to be, it is still, there's only like a couple of flavors that they see on a daily basis. The brown-skinned kid is usually the sassy best friend, other than Casey Undercover and a couple others. There's more flavors out there. There's more experience and perspective out there that it's not being reflected to these children. And so they walk through life with a culture that doesn't reflect truth to them, or they have to dig deep to find something to connect to. And when you're aware of that and you're in a position to change any of it, or to be additive in any way, shape, or form, that you got to take every opportunity to do so. So that's where Riri came from, and Miles came from like an earlier version of that thought process, and now we're adding characters into Action Comics in DC, and we have a new book called Naomi, David Walker and I, coming out. That's a very substantial additive element to the DC universe, not just with what the character and her point of view, but she's going to be bringing things to the DC universe that were not there before. So it just seems to me that there's tons of story not being told, and I can get there a little bit from my perspective, and then hopefully that helps everybody else get there as well. But yeah, I see what's missing, and I can't do all of it, but I can do some of it. And also, I'm not the voice that should do all of it. There's clearly hundreds of people more qualified to do this, but I'll do my part.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you both.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry.
Second, so you both had the unique and really cool experience of writing characters that have blockbuster legacies behind them. So I was really curious to hear a story of when you felt like balancing that legacy or that maybe corporate identity of character conflicted with your view of that character, and how, like, what was the process of either saying no and how it was resolved, or what was the experience like?
Well, you think. I don't think about what the corporate thinks about the character. I think about what like the world thinks about the character. It is a shared character. Superman is a shared character. That is Superman is everybody. Spider-Man is everybody. It's not every character's like that, but Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, these are shared characters. And when you feel like the Wonder Woman movie being a perfect example of, that's how we all feel about her. That's it. You did it. Like that's not a corporate thing. That's a cultural thing. So I think more about that than I do about what, who cares about the corporate thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, basically I have a similar approach. So when I was writing the X-Men, when I was writing X-23, Black Widow, I was really trying to put myself in the skin of these characters and really think about, what their pain is, what their joy is, what drives them, and just inhabit them. And I never really came up against anything as far as early on, especially when it was only much later in my career that I started, butting heads a little bit with the way certain characters should be portrayed. And those were on books I ultimately said no to. The only time I ever had to laugh was when I was writing Han Solo. And I had him drawing his blaster first. They don't like I really don't like that. I was shocked. I was like, it's such a small thing. And they're like, no. So I won't go into the full details of that exchange. But that was, but other than those books I actually ultimately said no to, that was the only time I really sat back and I was like, wow, this is real. You know.
But I do love discovering that there's an argument among fans about a character that I wasn't aware
yeah.
of. And that could still happen. And I'm so online that I'm always surprised that there's some deep thing going on that I missed out on. But yeah, I've enjoyed my new DC, where I'm the voice breaking up the fight between the Superboys.
The first round of hate mail I ever got when I was at Marvel was because it was during my run of X-23, and it was because one of the teenage characters makes a comment about Psylocke's cellulite in a snarky teen way. I got so much shit for that. So much shit. All of the fanboys came out and were just like, no, she does not have cellulite. That is terrible. How could you say that? And I was like, all right. Wow. Okay.
Thank
you. The little things.
So we started a couple minutes late. I'd like to give you each about 2 minutes each, because I would like to respect the fact you've been waiting for a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is in regards to Miles and Riri Williams. And I guess my question was, we talk about social media and people's opinions online, and there's obviously a contingent of folks online who are comic book fans who do not like the representation that is out there. And I'm just curious, when you first started, introducing the characters, was there any pushback from the company or from the creators? And if there was, how did you handle that? And I guess my other question that I want to ask, two-part question, is that being that, you're writing about characters of color, I know you talked about your kids and you wanted representation for your kids. How did you, as a white male, go about with the process of writing for characters of color? Was there a need or a process of having a conversation with folks about kind of their perspective and what are some important issues that need to be tackled with these characters?
You asked all of the excellent questions that I wanted to talk about earlier, so thank you, Brett. This is good. Number one, nobody corporate, I've never got any pushback on anything. In fact, Miles was created in such a beautiful vacuum of what if, why don't we? And on a book that was successful and it wasn't being done out of stress or need or which is sometimes how things are done out of panic and fear. It was being done out of, why don't we? What's stopping us? We should. Right, and once the story's truth, which was the death of Peter Parker, revealed itself, that then we're like, all right, we're doing it. Let's do it. And I was so grateful that the response to Miles matched what was going on behind the scenes, because the audience wouldn't know what's going on behind the scenes. All they know is they were going to react to what they're seeing, right? And what they saw reflected well. It doesn't always happen that way, but this one did, and I was. It was an enormous thing in my life. It's hard to describe because I was at the center of a lot of people coming up to me of different backgrounds and ethnicities going, seriously, don't mess this up. Seriously. Seriously. And a friend of mine, I was working on the Powers TV show, and I'll say who it was Kari Payton, who was actually the voice of Cyborg, came up to me and told me, and this is before anyone knew anything. He just heard I was doing Spider-Man and that there was brown skin involved, right? And he pulled me aside on set and he goes, I'm gonna tell you a story. And he told me that when I was a kid, all our friends played superheroes, and my friends wouldn't let me be Batman or Superman because of my color of my skin, but I could be Spider-Man. And that's why, Spider-Man can be anybody. Kids of color think that. So you should know that. And I didn't know that. But what was amazing was he told me this story. I then realized it was maybe the 80th person who had told me a version of this story throughout the years I was writing Spider-Man, but I was just hearing it as this is why Spider-Man relates to everybody, right? I wasn't hearing, no, you need to do more. And once I was there, I realized, oh, this is what I was being told for years. So it felt like the right road the entire time, and that felt good. So that felt good, and so here we are, at the weeks away from the movie debut. I genuinely the relief I have is enormous because it's always, Miles and everything like that's always been done the right way. As far as how we go about this is something I actually wanted to bring up in this classroom environment. There is, with everyone kind of learning how to write their truth and write from their experience, there's also kind of a weird thing going on where there's being taught like, no, you should only write what you know and don't write other people's perspective. You should only write your thing. And I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from. That's not how literature is made. That's not how stories are told. Part of our job as writers is to go out into the world and investigate and embrace and understand and find the empathy and find the understanding of other people's perspective and experience. And that involves, an inordinate amount of talking to people and listening and hearing what people say. And also, when you're done writing what you've written, show your work to people who have lived and say, is there anything in here that sounds like bullshit? Is there anything in here? Could you point the bullshit out? And I do that all the time. I have friends that I can go point to the bullshit. And it's terrifying to write outside your perspective because you do have the world can comment on it, right? And if you make a mistake, you will hear about it, right? And instead of shying away from that, which I'm fearful a lot of creators have been doing, I've been eagerly investigating outside of my perspective even more so. And I just put out a book this year called Pearl. There's a few books coming out through Jinx World at DC, and one of them literally has characters based on me and David. It couldn't be more like our perspective of the universe. And then there's another book called Pearl that's about a tattoo artist that works in San Francisco who's an American-born Japanese girl who's an albino who couldn't be less like my perspective. And it's filled with things that have been just poured over cliche, just like Yakuza stories. They're just filled with the worst cliche in American culture, right? So I said, let us create a scenario for ourselves where we are embracing all of these terrifying things for writers. And I put out this book in a blind terror. I literally, the night this book came out, I said, I can't fucking sleep. I can't believe it. I can't believe I put out a book every week of my life for the last 27 years. And I'm literally like sweating about this because I'm so scared. And then literally went on Twitter and I saw a tweet from Arthur Miller that said, the best work is the work that is that close to embarrassing. That is close to like, that is the only work worth doing. And I got, that's what I feel. I feel like this is what you're supposed to feel like. So I tell my students, I tell other writers, dive in, go look outside yourself. And then guess what? When you go outside yourself and look for all that truth, you find a lot of healing things about your own life. You find a lot of commonality. And then, that's why we're all here, because we're all connected to stories. Like you try to reach out. You wanna tell your story so it connects to other people. And the only reason a way you can really do that is to reach outside yourself. So.
Well, and if I just might jump in for
Please.
a second, which is I think part of the reason why there is pushback is because there are so few writers of color in not just the comic book industry, but in all of pop culture, whether it's television, film. Our numbers are beginning to increase a little bit when it comes to prose, but really, it's not to where it needs to be. And if there were more writers of color, this wouldn't be as much of an issue as it is. But because there's so few of us, because up until 2016, no black woman had ever written at Marvel. No. I think, I could be wrong, but I think I might have been the first Asian American woman to write at Marvel. And that sucks. Those numbers are terrible. And it really hasn't improved that much. It gets better in incremental bits here and there. But because there's so few of us, I think I think that's the reason why there is pushback.
No, I wholeheartedly.
Because if we were like, if it was 50-50, if there's more of us, it would be less problematic. But the visuals just suck.
Yep.
And the lack of structural diversity within these industries sucks. So.
Right, we have one more question.
I'm so proud of Kelly Sue because I do think she was the one that stomped her foot and said, it's safe. And I can feel a difference from the origins of Carolcore to today. That feels like there's a, don't you? Do you feel like it's a shift in a grandly great direction?
In what
and
way?
and voices of people of different ethnicities and sexualities finding their way in comics.
Oh, I mean, the numbers are definitely improving.
Yeah.
I see it mostly in indie comics. I think it's beginning to trickle into Marvel and DC, not as much as I think as is needed, particularly since these are platforms. These aren't just companies that, have our favorite characters. These are platforms in which these characters reach out to masses, and masses are affected by them and their stories. And so when you only have one kind of imaginary influencing the stories that are being put out, it's very problematic. And I think that it's
confusing.
And confusing. And I think that it's something that needs to be very carefully examined going forward, how this can be changed and how we can change these structures within Marvel and DC. Because the indie comics are, we're, like I said, it's not great, but we're beginning to catch up more. But how within Marvel and DC we can make fundamental changes so that going forward, the imaginations that are producing these stories, no matter how benevolent, no matter how well-intentioned, aren't so limited.
Yeah, my daughter is 11 years old, and she's so connected to Lumberjanes that I caught her taking all 10 volumes to school every day. And it's like, just for her back. I'm like, it's just one at a time. Right. You don't need all 10. But I used to do that. I used to I might need all of this today. Right. I mean, I might need every issue of Captain America today. I'm feeling it, right? So so when I see, and I know it's anecdotal, but when I see like my daughter on her own, not just completely invested in this imagination that speaks so deeply to her, I feel good about things. I feel like these building blocks we're seeing right now are just going to explode over the next few years. Also, even the amount of college classes, the amount of people that are teaching and learning has altered the way comics are being made in a very excellent way, I think. So.
All right, we have one last question, and if you brought something, by the way, to sign, then after this question is asked and answered, you can come bring that down. Okay,
so
go ahead.
You would now have to create a question that just sums it all up, brings it all home. It's all on you, man.
This was very cool. Thank you very much. And I had one question, but Marjorie, you said something I thought was pretty interesting. So I have two, so hopefully both quick. But you said that sometimes when you write, it feels like you're somehow predicting the future. Mm-hmm. Do either of you ever feel when you're really creating something that reality somehow bends to what you write? Rather than a prediction, it's actually a creation of reality.
That's a good one.
That's a really great question.
And then the second part of this is that when...
Because I'll be thinking about that for the rest of my life, but go on, yeah.
no, because I think everything's awesome. And so I think, when you're so immersed in like these worlds that you create, and there's a lot of themes that come out, and I think, especially in comics, and one of which is people die and they come back. And so, given that you're immersed in these worlds, do you believe in death?
We believe in death.
Do you believe in death? Yeah.
Yeah, I almost died. I really believe in it. Yeah. I was told I wasn't leaving the hospital. I was. I do believe in it. No, but I know that people in comics get frustrated by the resurrection, but I think it's one of those things you can't have in the real world. So it's the only place you can get it is in comics. I know there's a cheap drama to it, but there's also a profound way to do it that's so exciting and beautiful, and a lot of us have really loved those, and a lot of creators have gone out of their way to create that moment of that thing. You can't get that person back in real life, but you know what? We can get them back here. So let's have that moment we can't have anywhere else. So it's more about that the wish fulfillment than baloney. And sometimes they're the same thing. So
I was raised in a Buddhist Christian household, so I've got like a mishmash of beliefs, but that'll tell you something as far as death goes. But as far as do I bend reality, I mean, I got to really think about that. I will tell you that when I'm in my zone and I'm listening to super loud music to get into that place where I can just release myself and not self-censor, it's weird, and it's going to sound really woo-woo and new agey, but I do feel like there's a part of my consciousness that goes somewhere else. And I can't explain it any better than that, but it's when I'm typing really fast, and I don't write longhand, because if I did that, it's too slow.
Yeah, I can't
There's
do it.
something about typing where my brain can just relax, and things just flow out. And it's kind of this really wild sensation that's beautiful, and I don't feel like I tap into it as much as I want. It's almost a drug.
Yeah, but you feel like you're often writing what you wish was happening, like you're not even consciously, like you're writing like, I wish the world was better. I wish the world was kinder. I wish the world was more understanding. So you write that world, right? And my conversations between people are often conversations I wish was happening versus the conversation that I witnessed, right? So by doing that, you're often putting energy out in the world.
Yeah.
I
agree with that.
That you're wishing, and then people are reading it, and then somehow they're reflective of it, and then they may behave better. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you definitely feel like you're in charge of your energy. Like, you definitely feel like I'm in charge of the energy I'm putting out in the world, and it does. I've certainly looked at my Twitter feed as saying, like, this should reflect me more than it reflects, others. And so my Twitter feed is all about inspiration and lifting other creators up, because that's literally where I want my energy to be produced. And so you do, after many years, I guess it takes a while, but you do feel like the energy, I guess it's because this is the first time I've ever felt like there's younger creators that grew up reading my stuff, like who have told me now. Like I never had that before. So like I feel like, oh, my energy is I should keep doing this. This is positive energy, and hopeful energy is a good thing to put out in the world. So it's more that than being like a soothsayer. It's more wish fulfillment.
Well, let's take this opportunity to give both of these authors
Thank you
some
so
energy
much.
back.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.